this is how I got to 6 figures and then 7 figures.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's broadcast of the Jeff Heilman Project. I am sitting with the esteemed Jeff Heilman, and we are continuing our series on the top stresses for 2025, hitting them head on, with today's episode being answering the question of the stress indicated by financial instability due to the rising cost of living. According to the American Psychological Foundation, these are your top stressors going into 2025. And this week, we will be talking about this financial instability due to the rising cost of living. But before that, how was your week? How's your week been? We had a rough day today. It wasn't so rough. It's actually it's pretty exciting.
Exciting for him.
It's exciting for me too. I feel like we get to share. We get to spread our wings. It's like an extension of myself. Our son Joseph.
And then there were 5.
Our son Joseph is 25 years old, and turning 25 in 2025. He'll be 25 in a few months, but we sent him off to Norway to study abroad for 6 months. It's pretty cool.
Overseas, officially.
He is literally over the ocean right now as we record. So here's to an awesome adventure, Joseph, and I can't wait to hear Aiden, how it all goes.
He goes by Aiden.
Yes,
it
he
is
does.
his name, but we call
It
him
is.
JoJo.
It is. So that was a little emotional for all you parents who are now empty nesters and have had to say goodbye to your children. It does not get any easier when you have 7 of them to say goodbye, but he'll be back, and hopefully we have a goal to go visit him in Norway. If you've been to Norway, or if you have any tips on traveling to Norway, let us know, because we'd love to hear. Jeff's been once. You went to
I did. I went to Oslo,
Oslo.
which is the southernmost town.
Did
in
you
the
also
fjords.
fly into Amsterdam and then from Amsterdam up?
Yeah, I flew through Amsterdam on the way to. I think I did London to Amsterdam to Oslo, and then I flew through Brussels to Manchester to London back home when I did my trip for
Wow.
consulting back in that would have been January of 2019. It was brutal because I worked 4 days. I left I was there Saturday to Saturday, and I did 3 cities in 2 countries, 4 days of work in 3 cities in 2 countries in 4 days.
Wow. I've only been
It was
the
rough.
southern-ish, I guess, Israel and Paris. Israel and France, more southern parts of Europe. But from what I see, I mean, the air looks crystal clear. The Alps and the
Oslo's
the mountains,
It's
and
incredible.
northern Europe just
In
looks
January,
phenomenal.
it starts getting dark at 2 in the afternoon, and it's a 2-hour sunset.
Wow.
It's dark at 4, so it starts getting dark at 2, and then it's dark by 4 o'clock, and then it starts getting light at 9, and I think it's broad daylight from like 11 to 2. It's just 3 or 4 hours of.
That's amazing, because the girls and I went on that trip this weekend to the beach, and the sun went down, from above the ocean to all the way sinking into the ocean. I think it was 2 minutes. It was enough for an Instagram reel. It was that quick. So that's pretty incredible. But so what we're talking about today is how can we encourage those that are listening, those that are watching on YouTube, in times of financial instability due to what is perceived to be the rising cost of living and financial instability. I pulled up on my computer. Plato is credited with saying, "Our need will be the real creator," which has also been reinterpreted as "necessity is the mother of all invention" by Plato. And it feels like that was just a really good kicking off point to talk about the rising cost of living and how to, survive in this economy as we see gas prices go up, and eggs. I mean, eggs we've talked about it on the show. Like,
Eggs were like $8 a dozen about a year ago.
yeah, it's crazy. It's still crazy. And I've noticed like to yesterday I filled up and it was here in California it was $4.17 a gallon at Rotten Robbie. So,
That's still $2 more than it was under Trump
yeah,
in
a few. So
2020.
if people are going into 2025 with the perceived notion that cost of living is still going to go, still going to go up, and how are we going to combat that if our income is not, if our jobs aren't also, if we're not getting pay increases in relation to inflation increases, how do you encourage somebody to either look at it? How do you encourage them to perceive it? How do you encourage them to be motivated to do something different? Should they be motivated to do something different? We talked last week when we were setting up and teeing up for this week and for these series about how I don't like to pay retail for anything. I like to, what if there's a club or if there's a something that I can help take advantage of, just shopping, shopping from a point of wisdom.
Yeah.
But what would you have to say?
Um, so I almost want to I almost want to preface this. I want to ask permission on my own podcast. How do we want this to go? Do we want it to be all light and beautiful, or do we want it to be like, all right, Jeff, just give it to me straight?
Well, I think that taking into account the variety of people that are watching our podcast and listening to our podcast, some aren't, not everybody is internally geared toward being an entrepreneur. Not everybody wants to be a public speaker. Not everybody wants to be in their own business because of whatever, they're content. And so from a point of let's not pull them out of what they're doing and say, gosh darn it, you got to do something else. But if you were in your job and needed to create
How about
additional
if we did a
income.
ladder? How about if we did a ladder?
Okay,
I think that's a good thing.
sure.
All right, so let's start on the basic form of the ladder. People who are not contributing to the economy in any way are going to be on some form of public benefit or family
Right.
support.
EBT or
Yeah. So
government assistance.
I would say the first thing that somebody wants to do is look and say, how productive am I? Right? Am I being productive? Or I heard a sermon. Sean Mulvaney sent me a really good sermon on Sunday that I listened to. The whole thing, it was really good. And it said, it was talking about the attack on manhood, um, and how a man is not an animal, right? Doesn't live based on fleshly desires.
Mm-hmm.
A man is not a boy. A boy has things provided for him. A man provides for himself and others. That's a line of delineation. And a man is not a woman, right? Anybody that thinks that a man is a woman or could be a woman or he could become a woman, they're they're having trouble understanding just basic nature, right? There's nothing in a man that is that is of the basic nature of a woman, and there's nothing in a woman that is of the basic nature of a man. The two could not be more clearly defined. And anybody that's having trouble with that, I do feel for them, and I'd be happy to talk with them about that and get them the help that they need to understand the perceived confusion on that. But a man is not an animal. A man is not a boy, and a man is not a woman. And so as we look at what happens when we're boys, and you could say when we are girls becoming women, but I'm from the guy's perspective because I'm a guy, so that's the perspective I'm going to stick with. When when I go from having everything provided for me to providing for myself, at least one could say I'm a man, right? I've gone from a boy to a man. So the first question on our ladder, by the way, I just made this up. I'm making this ladder up as we go here.
And I would just also go so far as to say that what I hear you talking about is maturation from a child to an adult,
Yeah, child to an adult,
or young
girl
child to
to a
an
woman,
adult, whatever.
boy to a
Yeah,
man.
that there's a maturation
There's a
process of
maturation
going
process,
from
and if you're looking at finances,
being a dependent to being independent.
that's right. So if you're looking at finances, the first thing you want to look at is, am I producing the stuff that I'm consuming, am I taking care of myself or anybody else, or am I being taken care of? And so the first step is if you're not productive, if you're not contributing anything, if you're not making any money, and you want to pivot and you're listening to this podcast, you want to figure out how to make money. And by the way, does that mean you can't start making money at 12 years old? No, you absolutely can. You can start producing at 12 or 15 or 18 or 22 or 35 or 47. You can start producing any time by going out and looking for something to serve somebody else. I don't care if it's scraping driveways in the snow or a snow blower. I don't snow blow because we don't have snow here. But take a
Hey,
snow
we
blower.
leaf blow. We have
We
leaf
leaf
blowers.
blow. We leaf blow. Yeah.
Um, and to add into your ladder that you're building here, one of the tips and one of the tricks that Jeff and I do once a year, at least, is we sit down and we will make a petition. We'll make a list of what the reality is of what it costs to live, the kind of lifestyle that we would like to live. And so I think as you're going from the reality of saying, I'm not going to be dependent anymore, I'm going to become more independent. Finding out, writing down what does it cost to do your Starbucks habit? What does it cost to put gas in your tank? Like find out real dollar and cent numbers, because a lot of people stumble in their lack of understanding how much they're actually spending. And one of the things that you used to have us do when we were first married was take a little notebook and write down every time you spent money. It's kind of like a calorie every time. Like for me, when I'm on Noom, every calorie I take, I write it down. Well, every time you spend something, take a notebook with you for a week, and every time that you spend money, write that dollar amount down and see
That was
where
going to
your
be
where your money's really
that was
going.
going to be the second thing, which is, are
Yeah.
you keeping track of every dollar?
Yeah.
And I have not kept track of every single dollar
No.
for many years because we've had an abundance, but we have budgeted.
Yes,
Here's
absolutely.
here we're going into the month. This is how much it is, right? So the first thing is, am I productive at all? Second thing is am I keeping track of the money that I'm spending? Do I
Mhm.
know where my money's going? Did I know that I spent $342 at Starbucks and have $600 in subscriptions
Yeah.
in a month, right? If you didn't know that, it'll help you to know that by writing
And we're
down,
not
keeping
sponsored
track
by
of everything.
Rocket Money, but Rocket Money is a really good
Rocket
app
Money
for
helps.
that.
Yeah. Rocket Money could sponsor if they want to.
Yeah, right,
Send me a check.
exactly. Sure,
We'll talk about
anytime.
you all day. Um,
And Dave Ramsey also with his if you Google search for Dave Ramsey, he'll have templates for setting up your budget and stuff like
so
that.
yeah, and here's what I would say. If you're broke, if you're totally broke, listen to, like, if you're in the poverty zone, I would listen to Susie Orman. Susie Orman's really good. Basic stuff, just talking about carving out 1% of your income, saving, get a job, read a book, just simple stuff. If you are middle class and you're happy with middle class, and middle class could be a bunch of different things. It could be 50 grand a year living in Iowa and you have a bowl in your bowling league with your name on a shirt. It could be 250,000 a year in New York and you're poor. Nothing wrong with bowling, nothing wrong with New York, but or not poor, but like middle class. If you're okay, just barely getting by, and there's nothing more that you really want to do other than just you hate your work and you want to go to the park on the weekends and cook barbecue, there's nothing wrong with that. I would say Dave Ramsey's your guy. But if you're not poor and you're not middle class in mindset and you want to actually create, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, in my opinion, you need to be listening to Trump. You need to be listening to Robert Kiyosaki. You need to be listening to Grant Cardone, because those guys talk about why debt is the best friend of billionaires. And Dave Ramsey is like, just get out of debt, stay out of debt, don't look at debt. Debt is bad. And from his perspective, yeah, if you want to be totally debt free, and own your house outright and have no bills and no obligations and no risk and everything's perfect and there's just totally fine, Dave Ramsey's your guy. But I don't listen to Dave Ramsey. I
If
don't
if y-
subscribe
if
to.
you're a big hitter, like Bill Murray says, that
Yeah,
llama, the
big
big
hitter
big
he is,
hitter,
the
he
llama.
is the llama, and you like to take risk, and if you feel like you only live once, and you're an entrepreneur, and you're ready to go big or go home, Kiyosaki is definitely going to be you're more in tune to the financial acumen that you'd like to start speaking that language of. So
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. There's so many awesome mentors in the financial realm that you could look to. And even just, if watching Shark Tank motivates you and pushes your button, then you
That's right.
definitely have an appetite for something larger than just paycheck to
Um,
paycheck survival.
and so the next thing that I would look at is once you start tracking is, are you budgeting? And again, you're not going to get rich by budgeting, but you can mitigate the risk of going broke by budgeting. And some people would say, save 5%, save 10%. I think that's probably fine. I like to keep 6 months cash on hand so we could go for 6 months if I lost an income or a job or something blew up. But ultimately, if you budget and then you stick to that budget, you're going to get a float because you're going to allocate um, all of your bills and you're going to figure those out in a prioritized order so that everybody has different ideas of priority. But ultimately, to me, number one priority for me is electricity. Right, I've got to pay that because if electricity isn't there, I can't keep my food cold. I can't get the internet. I can't charge my cell phones, which means I'm out of business, whatever business I'm running. After that's running water. After that is gasoline for the car for transportation. After that's car insurance. Um, and then
Rent.
rent comes after
Like
that
rent
because you can
is
come
in
up
there
with
too.
food pretty much anywhere. But if you don't have running water and electricity in your house, you're out of business, and you have to literally relocate yourself to somewhere where you can get water and electricity. So, but I literally do that, and I say, let's say you have $1,000 a month, and you have a bunch of bills, and we're just using small numbers here, but $1,000 a month. Let's say electricity is $50. I would put that first, and I'd have $50 in one column, and I would have $950 in the second column, and then $50 for water. So nine fifty becomes 900, and so on, and then you burn down that dollar amount until you're either out of money or out of bills. And if you're out of money, then the bills that are below that could be food, could be clothing, could be new tires on the car, whatever it is. You don't get those things
What
that
we
month.
were what we were trained to do for anybody who's listening, watching, is to have two bank accounts. One is the account that your paycheck gets deposited into, and then when we go to pay our bills two times a month,
That's
we
right.
transfer the dollar amount into a secondary account, and that
Yep.
secondary account we go to zero. We burn it to zero.
That's
Like
right.
we allocate
It's a
all of our
payroll
bills.
account for vendors.
We allocate all of our bills, and our goal is to get that one to zero. And that way, that leaves that other account, the what that is originally being
That's
deposited
right.
into, gives that room to grow. So, in case you haven't got your account set up that way, we do it that way. We have two accounts, one for the receiving and then one for outgo.
That's right.
And we just do that transfer twice a month when we pay our bills.
So the third one is, are you budgeting? And then the fourth one is, are you as productive as you could be with your spare time? So to me, this could be reading books, and you don't have to buy them. Do we have books? We have thousands and thousands and thousands of books because we valued having books around us, buying books,
And they're
curating a
pretty.
library. They're a
I like
beautiful way
looking
to
at them.
decorate, right? They're also really good to read. If you
Yeah,
could,
for sure.
um, so we started to make small investments in ourselves in the area of buying books.
And there's so many good books at like Goodwill, thrift stores, used bookstores, the library, checking out books that's free. But if you can begin to invest in doctrine, in success doctrine and financial success doctrine, then that will help you to learn to grow about the subjects that you feel like you might need some assistance
That's
in.
right. So number one is, are you productive? If you're not productive, get a job, get some form of income, go serve somebody. Number two is, are you tracking your finances so you know where your dollars are going? Number three is, are you living on a budget so that you can at least mitigate your downside risk from having some money and not necessarily knowing whether or not it's okay to spend it on XYZ? Number four is, are you growing? Are you investing in any sort of growing? And then number five is, are you reaching? And when I'm saying, are you reaching? I'm saying, what I'm talking about is, I wasn't always in a corporate situation where I had a salary plus commissions plus stock plus consulting plus speaking fees, coaching fees, online newsletter, advertising revenue, online course sales. Like, we didn't always have all of these income sources in the beginning. I would say I was not really figuring it out when I was at the auto parts store. And I didn't really figure it out. I started my own business when I was doing, well, that's not true. At the auto parts store, I did work for Mitch part-time for a very short season. And so what I did was I worked at the auto parts store during the day, and then I started cleaning apartments at night. And then eventually the apartments became the full-time job, and we did multi-level marketing at night. And then the apartment cleaning business transitioned into a sales uh, company that I was doing. I was selling merchant accounts, point of sale systems, direct to consumer, and I did that during the day, and then I did multi-level at night. So I guess you could always say I've always had something going on the side.
Yes, you always have had.
But I mean, I've had newspaper routes. I've waited tables at night, done newspaper routes in the morning. I know Mitch got a job at UPS one time, way back in probably 97, 98. My business partner in the cleaning business. So are you reaching so that you can try to get some extra money coming in? Because if you've got the basic productivity down, you're tracking your finances, you're budgeting, and you're growing, and you're reaching and working on top of that, stuff is going to start breaking loose for you in your life. And we could talk about all kinds of stuff, but I would say that's a good 5 basic checklist to go from 0 to, I this is how I got to 6 figures and then 7 figures of income, is just doing that, working 2 jobs, keeping track of our money, growing, and then, I guess kind of the bonus would be, what's your network look like? Can you force your employer's hand for promotion, or look for work outside of your current employer to force their hand? And then the third, and this is probably the most powerful thing, is, are you spending time praying and meditating and visioning what your life is going to look like making more money? And, people say, well, life's not all about making money. Well, then why do people spend 60 hours a week of their life doing it? I'm not saying money's the most important thing. I'm saying if somebody's saying money's not the most important thing and they're spending 80 hours a week, how would you know what the most important thing is? Because you spend all your life making money, and they're hypocrites.
I have just texted Andrew a link to what I think is one of the most important books that we've ever read together as a couple in regards to combating the specific stress of due to the rising cost of financial instability due to the rising cost of living. And that book was written in 1990 by Paul Zane Pilzer, and the book was titled Unlimited Wealth: The Theory and Practice of Economic Alchemy. And if you could maybe tell us a little bit more about Paul Zane Pilzer, the author himself, what I can highlight is in this book, he specifically talks about how Plato originated with necessity being the mother of all invention, but he talks about certain things, industries like the record player, the vinyl record player transforming into the CD, a compact disc transforming into the MP3, that there is always going to be need, and that need there, just like there's a rising cost of living, industries you know will need to move with the cheese, but there is an unlimited wealth available because the earth produces unlimited need and it produces unlimited resources. Could you tell us a little bit more about
Well, yeah,
him
it's
and
been a while since
Wharton,
I've read
Unlimited
Paul
Wealth?
Zane Pilzer,
I
but
was
he
looking,
was
it's
the
discontinued. It's like $50 on Amazon,
wow,
but
really? We've
you
got a
could get
couple
a
copies
used
of it. I
you
know
can
that.
get used for like $14, but
But
yeah.
Paul Zane Pilzer was the youngest vice president at Citibank at 25. He was economist, Wharton School of Finance graduate, absolute magna cum laude, top of his class by a country mile. Super, super smart economist, super smart in math. And what he came up with was effectively the equation that the wealth of nations is equal to technology times the physical resources, period. And Rich DeVos makes a joke one time that the Russians are mad at us because we have all the cars and they have all the parking lots. Um, we have innovation and technology in this company, in this country, which is at the core of our identity and our DNA. And we have a whole lot of physical resources. And I would go further to say the government model, which facilitates the profit motive to remain intact, facilitates entrepreneurship being worth it in this country more than it does anywhere else. So when you have government that facilitates the profit motive, physical resources available to be multiplied, and technology to actually do the multiplication, you're going to see wealth always. And if you use kind of two contrasting countries, one being Japan, which has almost no physical resources, they import all of their oil, almost all of their food, all of their um, raw materials and steel and aluminum and gold. They don't have any natural resources. They've got, I think it's 100 million people. I think they've got half the volume or maybe a third of the volume in the United States. You can fact check me on the stats, but I think it's like 110 million people in Japan living in a place that's smaller than the state of California, right?
Right.
It's you know, geography wise, it's as big as California, but there's holes because it's a bunch of islands. So you've got incredible population density, no land, no resources, no gold, no oil, no steel, and yet they're one of the wealthiest countries in the history of the world. And then you've got Russia, which is 11 time zones wide, more natural resources than the entire rest of the world combined, taking out Africa. They've got all the oil, all the gold, all the steel, all the iron ore, all the natural gas, all the resources, but they're broke. Why are they broke? It's because there's no technology innovation going on in order to multiply what physical resources they have. And so they literally just sell off all their natural resources to all the countries around them that do have innovation, like Switzerland, like Germany, like Austria, like France, like Spain.
So Japan has 124.5
124.5.
million
I guess 110.
people,
That's pretty close.
and Russia has
Sorry about those 14 million people.
143.8 million
Yeah.
people.
So Russia has all the people, they've got all the natural resources. They don't have any money because they don't have the technology multiplier because their government does not facilitate entrepreneurship, which preserves the profit motive and says, oh, if I'm going to go out and work 100 hours a week, I want to make sure I can make 30 or 40 million bucks for the privilege of doing that. Otherwise, it's just not worth it to me. Well, if you can't make big money, you're not going to get the sharpest people working 100-hour weeks, period. Case in point with China. Case in point with Russia. You got really, really sharp folks over there, millions and millions of them. You've got more smart folks than we have folks, but they're not incentivized to do the work.
And in America, currently, there is 334.9 million people. This is astounding. Do you have any idea how many people the population of China?
I think it's like 1,350,000,000.
1.41 billion.
Yeah, 1,400,000,000.
That's
So
a lot.
they've
That's a
got
lot of
almost
people.
5 times more people. That's what I'm saying. They got more sharp people
Yeah.
than we have people.
Yeah.
But they're not incentivized to go out and do innovation because they live in fear.
The communist regime.
And the
yeah.
communist regime keeps the profit motive going to the government because the government owns the means of production. And it's just a real simple equation.
So, and
It's
what
in Cuba, the government owns the means of production, so there isn't any. In Russia, the government owns the means of production, so there isn't any. North Korea,
I
same
just
thing. China,
really loved
same
what
thing.
he did in Unlimited Wealth by basically taking that scarcity mentality that most people through a government education system have been trained to believe, that we have limited resources, that there's only just so much oil going and there's only just so much. And then what we see as an economist that is from the perspective of unlimited wealth. I love how he talks about, like, yes, we may have currently limited resources in oil, but there will always be something like Elon Musk with his energy cart. Like, we
Oh my
will
gosh.
move
Look at,
toward
like if people could just
unlimited wealth.
understand post-internet, the end of the Stone Ages is 2024.
Mm-hmm.
The end of the Stone Ages. It is going to be as if the entire course of human history up to and including 2024 was the Stone Ages. And then now we are just overnight AI infused. And it's not going to be completely overnight, but it's going to be pretty fast. It's not going to take 8 to 10 years. I'll give you an example. ChatGPT had 1 million, I, I think ChatGPT had 100 million users in 5 days. There are 2 billion people that use ChatGPT every month. That is the fastest adoption of any technology in the history of the human experience times 10.
ChatGPT has 300 million weekly active users, a 20% growth since October of 2024.
300
Over the
million a
past
week.
year, the platform has seen impressive growth, adding 250 million users in just 23 months.
Yep, 250 million in 23 months, and that was on top of that. Those are weekly users. We're talking about to get to 100 million people who had ever used it was, I think if we do that
ChatGPT reached 100 million active monthly users in about 2 months
in
after its launch
2
in
months. Okay,
November of
so forgive
2022.
me. It was a million users in 5 days. It was 100 million users in 2 months. 100 million users. That took Facebook years,
Hmm.
years and years to get to 100 million. It took Google years and years. Took 2 months for ChatGPT to get. And ChatGPT, compared to what's coming, ChatGPT 4.0 is way better. And now, if you look at what Elon Musk is building with his new Project Colossus, he's taking the H200 chip from NVIDIA, which is way faster, way better than the H100 core. And he's buying hundreds of thousands of those chips and paying for software that will actually sync it all together. When you take that plus what's coming out with quantum computing, you're going to be able to solve all types of cancer because anything that can be reduced to a math sequence and anything that has life and growth and molecules and mitochondria in it can be broken down into a math sequence. You can literally say, if you take this pill, if you have this DNA, if you do these stretches, whatever it is, you're going to be able to solve all forms of human disease, all forms of cancer. You're going to be able to extend the average life expectancy of people by 20 and 30 and 40 years. The average life expectancy right now is 86, I think, for women and maybe 82 for men. You're being able to take the average person from 82 to 122.
The average life expectancy in the U.S. is 77.
77. Okay. So 77 to 87, 97, 107, 117. You're talking about in the next 20 to 30 years, you're going to have people living to 115. You and I need to stay alive long enough for AI to be able to
Well,
factor this in. And when we look at these, just to
yeah.
close out on that, when we look at how AI is the starting gun for the second half of humanity, it's going to get to the point where getting up and going to work at a job every day is retarded. There's just why would you ever do that? Because you could make hundreds and thousands of times more money pushing buttons on your phone or painting something or drawing something or having um, some form of blockchain or non-fungible token based artwork. And so when we're looking at the very basics, why do I start at the basics if we're going to make trillions of dollars with ChatGPT? And there will be people that do that with AI because the fundamental underlying problem in the United States in 2024 is that we are the only system of government, as free as we are, that does not educate our own young about our system of economics. The only ones, right? If you live in China, you understand communism cold turkey. Same
Well,
thing in
I'm
Cuba, same
wondering,
thing
now
in
that you're
North Korea.
mentioning that, which I do agree with, I'm wondering if that almost hasn't been by some sort of divine design by the creator, because how we do our economics is basically a religion unto itself. And if we can remain leaving it up to the parents to teach our way and our systems of economics, then then maybe we'll be less likely to have. I think a big part of the problem with today's government school systems is that they are being taught a form of economics, but that form of economics is socialism, and that form of economics is communism. So if we can keep the government system out of economics with our children and just keep it based, ABCs, one, two, threes, how to do math, and how to read, write, then perhaps the understanding should be that this is the parent's job to teach economics to your children, and it
Well,
is the parent's job to
it's certainly the
budget.
parents' job to teach their children economics. It's the parents' job to teach their kids everything.
Yeah,
And the public school system was only ever meant to indoctrinate
yeah,
children with the basic life skills so that they could go work a factory job and fill up
100%.
Rockefeller.
Yeah.
People who are depending on the public school to educate their children, I mean, that'd be like expecting, uh, I don't know.
I
That'd be like expecting somebody else to go to
I
work,
think
work your career
one
for
of
you,
the
and give you all
greatest
the paycheck. It's simply not going to
one of
happen.
the greatest things that we've ever, in addition to high fives in the hallway, that we've ever made instituted in this house is that there's always plenty in the house of Heilman. Now, granted that that hasn't always been easy, and there's definitely been times where we've had to like tighten up our belts and tell the kids, look, we need to, we need to be careful. But having an underlying concept of there's always plenty. And I love that that's what unlimited wealth talks about. I love that if you could gather anything, since we're specifically addressing concern based on the cost, financial, acumen in the rising cost of living, if you could begin to wrap your brain around there being an abundance, that there's always more than enough,
Yeah.
then you will be able to open your doors to new ways of making money, to uh, new changes in the economy. Maybe instead of immediately shooting down AI and being scared and like saying that this is, something that's going to hurt you, how could we change to look at how AI is going to aid you and going to help you, and being able
Yeah.
to
Oh my
to
gosh, let me give you a perfect example. This is what it's like. And this is human nature. So I'm not mad at anybody, right? I'm not mad. Um, but I was in Vegas about 2 years ago, and for some reason, I think it was time because they make it hard for you to get Ubers in Vegas. The
from the
mob,
airport, or just in
no,
general.
the mob runs the taxis and the licenses and the placards for them, and because of that, um, the mob doesn't want Uber to mess with their business. So you can't have the Uber can't pick you up at the hotel in the front with everybody else. Uber is a second class citizen in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Um, so because of that, sometimes it is faster to take a taxi, even though it costs more. The attitude's horrible. The cars are destroyed, and you're more at risk, I think, of getting in a wreck than you are somebody who's driving their own car. Just pure incentive. So this guy, I'm listening to this guy, and he's like, yeah, the damn Uber drivers, they're taking all the business. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me. Well, I used to be able to work, 4 days a week and make 80 grand a year or whatever. And now I got to work 5 days a week and I'm only making 60 grand a year. And I said, so what are you going to do about it? And he said, oh, I'm moving in with my brother-in-law in North Carolina. I'm getting out of Vegas. I'm all together. And I said, well, what would happen if you just drove Uber? Oh, I could never do that. Blah blah blah. I've been doing this my whole life, and I'm not going to change. Right? And I'm like, you just got done telling me why your life sucks because it's being disrupted by Uber, and yet you're not willing to go. Why wouldn't you just go drive for Uber? I mean, that's what I would do. Why wouldn't you just change and move? But I think people's minds are so conditioned to focus on the things that are dangerous to them, and they never take control over the conditioning of their own mind to say, hey, if I change my attitude about this, if I start focusing on goals and playing offense and doing the things that I want to do, I can have good health, good finances, labor of love of my own choosing, wealth in quantity of my own decision, happy relationships and family. You have all these things that are available by changing your attitude. But I think people aren't used to that. They're conditioned to have a bad attitude because they think it makes them safe. And so part of the reason why we're doing this podcast is to create content starting with our own selves, holding ourselves accountable and holding and creating something for our own kids to have for posterity, but also to share with other folks a point of view on things that says, "Hey man, it's not that way. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be that way. You don't have to stay
I would go
stuck
so far as to say
in a job that's getting disrupted by technology."
the way to circumvent the rising cost of living is to begin to get excited about emerging technology. Michael Jackson was so excited
64 track
about being
recording.
able to go to a 64 track.
Yeah.
He was
First guy
so
ever.
excited to be able look at how his legacy took off when he embraced an emerging technology with
Yeah.
video, with
Bing
MTV.
Crosby wanted to play more golf.
Yeah,
So he doubled down on doing recorded shows
and audio cassette tape. He
and
he
cassette
he
tape
TDK or
recordings.
what it,
He
he
was a
was.
huge early investor in TDK
Yep,
audio recording equipment because he wanted to be able to play more golf. So he said, look, if I get recording equipment, I don't have to do the show live. We'll tape it.
yep,
Then we'll show it on primetime TV in the evening. If we tape it at night, show it
yep.
in the evening. I can play golf in the morning
That's right.
5, 6, 7 days a week.
That's right.
So these are the types of thoughts that lead to, and by the way, if you have not read The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, oh my God, I've had that on Audible on repeat over and over for probably the last 8 months. It's an easy listen, 2.5 hours start to finish. I've probably listened to it 150 times. I listen to it while I'm sleeping. I listen to it while I'm driving. I listen to it while I'm working out. It is, and it was written 120 years ago. But he was talking about the philosophy of understanding that the unseen wealth that's available, and he's talking about the physical resources and the ideas for technology advancement to multiply those resources for wealth is literally unlimited. It's unlimited. And now we start to see there are going to be people. Elon Musk, no doubt in my mind, Elon Musk will be the world's first trillionaire. We just had our first 100 billionaire a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates. Bill Gates was the first guy. I think he was the first guy to hit $100 billion. And Elon Musk is literally going to be 10 times richer than the richest guy in the history of the world and do it 25 years earlier through AI. And we're going to see we're going to see hundreds of thousands of millionaires made, hundreds of thousands, millions of millionaires be
What
created from this new
resource do you
technology.
find for the new emerging technologies? Like, there used to be like a Business 2.0 magazine. Like, is there a form of,
They're all trying to keep up with ChatGPT. I mean, literally, I've had conversations in the last week with ChatGPT as if I was talking to Pablo Picasso, as if I was talking to Aristotle, as if I was talking to Alexander the Great, as if I was talking to Leonardo da Vinci. He covers everything known in known written record. I say it's he because it's a dude. But ChatGPT will cover all of those things. You can literally sit there and say, I'm having a conversation with the closest modern day
but
representation of
is
AI
there
of
a
Leonardo da Vinci in real time
I
with the
recognize I
accent.
recognize I
He talks
recognize
with
what
the accent.
ChatGPT can do.
Yeah.
I call it Chuck because
Chuck
Chuck
GPT.
Norris can do anything, so it's
Oh, yeah,
Chuck.
yeah.
I recognize what Chuck can do, but is there like, how do I find out about emerging technology in the area of
I would
automotive
go
of
I would go
motorcycles
look
or
at I would go look at YouTube, and I would find the companies that are doing the biggest innovation and find out what those CEOs names are. All of those CEOs have keynote speeches. All of those keynote speeches are chronicled on YouTube, and you can literally filter. Here's what I would do. I would say, all right, what's an industry that I'm interested in? If you're interested in, let's say automotive, right? Then you would go to the top automotive companies and you would find out their CEO, find out the names of the top automotive companies. Then you go find out what the names of the CEOs are for those companies. Then you go to YouTube and search for name of CEO keynote speech. Then you go and reverse that down and you sort it based on the most recent data. Then every keynote speech is going to have an opening comments, a closing comments, and the opening comments are going to be condensed into about 10 minutes. So everything they're going to cover in their entire talk is going to be covered in 10 minutes. From that, you can do it on 2x if you want. And so in 5 minutes, you can get everything that the sharpest CEO, for each of the 20 sharpest CEOs in the world are talking about. Then what I would do is I would get a tally sheet out and I would start making a list of all the vocabulary words that I hear. AI, ChatGPT, interconnected cars, self-driving cars, autonomous cars, and I would make hash marks for the number of times that I hear those
also called a
vocabularies.
word cloud.
Yeah, word cloud. Yeah, word cloud. That's word cloud's good. And I would make hash marks for the vocabulary words for all those things. And you might have 20 or 30. If you listen to 20 opening comments on 2x, it'll take you 100 minutes. and you'll literally get a list of 40 to 50 vocabulary words with a weighting system as to what those vocabulary words are used the most. You build a word cloud, then you go take the top 5 vocabulary words and you go look for every single article that you can find based on those vocabulary words. And I would say I want articles that have all 5 of these vocabulary words, and you'll find it at The Atlantic, you'll find it at Financial Times, you'll find it at Wall Street Journal, The Economist, Harvard Business Review, um, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. They all write. They're all competing for your attention. And then what you're doing is you're basically just running off the arbitrage of all these folks trying to compete for your attention by creating the best content. And then you tell them what content, and you have basically a bidding war, an auction for your attention. And then you go down the rabbit hole that way. That's what I've done to try to educate myself because I'm really curious. I'm naturally excited about these things and understanding now. Facebook does all that for me because it comes up in my feed, whatever I'm learning. But to me, I don't think of myself as particularly smart. I don't think of myself as particularly
I
ambitious.
love that you just drilled that down because Malcolm Gladwell talks about in his masterclass about how the thing that he feels is missing is people, when they don't do their own research, they're preventing their ability to go down a rabbit hole. And it's when you're going down the rabbit hole and you're learning, like something will pop up that you didn't even consider because you're doing your own research. And so I do love how
That's right.
how you're illustrating that, like, it's important to do your own research if you're looking into something and not just let some algorithm feed you what they think that
Yeah.
you are interested in. Do your research and enjoy it. Um,
So
as we're as
simple
we're
things you can do
yeah.
as we close, right? Number one, are you working? If you're not working, consider working. There might be some people here that don't have a job right now and they're
Yeah.
looking for work. Find work. That's the first thing you do. Second thing, figure out where your money's going. Third thing, start telling your money where you want it to go based on what is most valuable to yourself and your family. Number 4, start increasing your ability to produce by studying and just developing your natural curiosity. I like guitar, I like piano, I like clarinet, I like trumpet. I'm learning how to play all 4 of those instruments and draw and paint and sculpt. And I'm building a newsletter. And we've got the LinkedIn and Twitter following for pre and post call to actions against the newsletter. And we'll have online courses that we'll sell through the newsletter. And we'll have the next, eventually we'll have ad revenue that will be sold. I've got my hand in several pieces of business. I've got consulting clients that reach out. I've got a day job. I've got a family run. Like there's a lot of things that we're working on. And some would say, well, put all your eggs have your eggs in different baskets. Some would say, put all your eggs in one basket. From a business standpoint, most of my income comes from my day job. So I focus on that, and I do a good job at that. Top rep in my group, performing, hitting my number, and making sure that the budget that's attached to the cost associated with my name on the ledger, that's black ink instead of red ink, right? So we're doing that, but I'm not stopping at a day job. Like, what about real estate investments? What about online course sales? What about consulting? What about all these other aspects of making money that you can then pour into investments and effectively move into that Donald Trump, Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki realm where you actually pivot away from being an employee, away from being self-employed, away from even being a large business owner into that investment standpoint. And the freest people that I know are investors. They're in private equity, they're in venture capital, they're in real estate. They have maximum tax advantages if they pay any tax at all. Many of them do not. And they live the life of Riley. They're free to travel. They're free to go and take care of their family and do
And if you're interested in hearing what the Bible says about finances and what Jesus has to say on finances, tune into my channel, Jessica Builds, on
Jessica Builds
Friday.
on Friday. See you
For
Friday.
See You Friday, this will be our second episode my second broadcast, and I've linked. We're gonna have Andrew link below the first episode, the first broadcast of See You Friday, where we talk about combating stress from a biblical standpoint. So super excited about that project.
A legacy
If you're
tribute to your grandmother, who today
yes,
is her
today is
2-year
her
anniversary of her
2-year
passing away.
anniversary of her passing away. We got together every Friday for lunch, and at the end of every Friday, she would say,
See you
see you
Friday.
Friday. So Fridays are my fellowship from a Bible standpoint, kind of like a Bible study that I do on my channel. and on my website at Jessica Builds. So
That's right.
tune into that. Next week, we are going to be talking about job insecurities. Stress number 2, job insecurity related to automation and technological change.
That'll be
And
fun.
so that should be
I've had plenty
interesting.
of job losses. So.
Yes, and being able to adapt and maybe become an early
Yeah. The
adapter.
good news is if you lose your job, chances are it's because it wasn't working.
Yes.
Something wasn't working. Either the boss was a turkey or you weren't doing, there were other people doing your job better, or the job wasn't necessary, or the money that it cost to pay you to do your job wasn't offset by the productivity of the business. And so over time, it's certainly going through it is painful. I lost my first really big job at Cisco in 2008, and that was horribly painful. I had nightmares. I couldn't sleep for a year. But at this point, I've gotten to the point where it's like, good riddance. If somebody is not excited about me working for them, man, I'm going to take my foot out of that bucket
Tell me
and put it in.
now.
Tell me now. The sooner the better, because
Sooner the
I
better.
am excited about the next job that I'm going to have so I can go do something where people are actually receptive to having me join the company. And we're hoping now that there's some faith and there's some self-image there saying that. But I would say that anybody listening to this podcast could say to themselves, look, if I'm getting laid off from a job, it's because it's not working. Whatever's going on, either I'm not working, the company's not working, and chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're growth-oriented enough. It's probably not you. It's them, ladies and gentlemen.
So tune in next week for that rising episode that is already beginning. And we look forward to seeing you, and have an awesome rest of this week, you guys. Happy New Year.
Thanks for joining
God bless.
the Jeff
See you
Heilman
Friday.
podcast. See you.
Bye.